Denise, thank you for that report. So this encounter with Mother Teresa opened his eyes to the world majority, as you said in your report.
The majority world. Yeah, that was a new term that he introduced me to. And and it wasn't just encountering this person of Mother Teresa, but it's what she embodied. And Mother Teresa was really one of those pioneers of incarnational living, and incarnational meaning that bringing Jesus, living among these people, not just going there sweeping in and trying to solve everyone's problems and then get out of there. It was really about relationships and understanding people and not seeing all these amazing, so many people were dying around her. There weren't all of these neat little tidy stories. And yet she persisted in she saw something in the poor. And I think when he was there, he caught a glimpse of that too, that there's something beautiful and divine in these communities. The presence of God is palpable. And I think that's what we miss when we just kind of look at these pictures and say, oh, that's horrible, or even give money, and that's great to give money to the poor, but I think we need to kind of invest more of ourselves in them and with them. And that's what his message is a community.
That's what David said in Psalm 133, how good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell together in unity. There, God commands a blessing. And, he was moved. Denise, you've had the experience. When you're in these poor places, and by the way, 70% of God's family lives in that 80%, that poor part of our globe. You sense the presence of God. Who said the famous line, we all need to learn to live simply so others may simply live. We're really seeing that in these models.
I was there at that event, and I was so happy that Denise was able to do this piece. And I remember I was really shook to the core after hearing from Chris. What was so, amazing was that he said we never talk about the poor, but we say them by name. And so when he was actually referring to stories of people he helped, it was like different names, like say Anna and John, and even just in that piece he says, we don't say we minister to the poor, we are among the poor. They need to be, it needs to be an inclusive sense of community, that they are us and we are them and we are together. It's not like we're here and they're over here. That was a huge paradigm shift for me, to look at it that way.
And he even he asked the question, well, how many people do you know who are poor? How many people are in your life, do you have a relationship with, who are really poor? And I'm not talking, in Canada, there's poverty and then there's extreme poverty. In Canada we have access to resources if you are poor. And that's not to disparage those people, but there's a difference between poverty and extreme poverty. When as Moira, you've seen it too. When you go to Africa, there's such a difference. But how many people in my life are poor? And I think if you have relationship with people who are going through those kind of things, it changes your perspective, and it also engages you in a whole new way with God. And I think that's the beauty that he's found. He's not just living this life of sacrifice and I'm going to go and live among the poor and sacrifice the comforts of my life here. It's more like, no, I'm going to find the heart of God. And the heart of God is in places that you would least expect it to be. And that there's a treasure to be found in these places that he has seen, and that so many other people go. And one girl in the piece is going to go to a favela in Brazil, and it's for that very reason. There's something that we're looking for more of God.
And it's a mindset, like you were saying, Melinda, really shifting the way you see others and the way you see your own life. Ellie, not everybody can go to India. Not everyone can afford to get to India to help out and live among the poor. But everyone can shift their mindset in how they view their own life and their giving to others around them.
Right, and that's why I think this piece and this story is so very important, is because, I'm always thinking practically, what is the takeaway value of us watching a piece like that? Well, God's going to do different things in different lives as people watch that. And you've talked about the way it's impacted you. And I think one of the ways that it can impact viewers is the whole idea of getting outside of themselves. Because when there's difficult economic times, and maybe we've lost a job or we might be losing a house, we're still incredibly wealthy.
Absolutely.
The poorest, in our countries are still incredibly wealthy compared to the majority world.
I was corrected, the point you've made, Melinda. Tim Huff of Light Patrol, when he was on the couch being interviewed here, I referred to the homeless in Toronto. And you corrected me. No, they are people who are homeless, and just changing our thinking, becoming more embracing. My husband's just back from Mozambique, and he referred to the people there. He was told by the pastor that they have nothing. And my husband said, well, don't they eat the grass? And he said, no, they eat a baboon diet. They follow the baboons, and if what they see the baboons eating doesn't make them sick, they eat that. They are really in a crisis. And so the challenge is, what are we going to do? How are we going to help them? And that's just one spot on a needy world globe.
I know this is a book plug, but if somebody is really challenged with this Simple Spirituality book that Chris has written is unbelievable, and it challenges you, and you have to be ready for this, because after Denise did the piece and he talked, I drove home and I was overcome. I was crying all the way home. I heard stories I'd never heard about people. I felt God's heart like moving me to say, Melinda, look beyond yourself and see the poor, because I love them. Or not the poor, but you're poor and broken, they are poor and broken. We are together in this. And I cried and cried. I came home and Pete's like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, I just heard it from Chris from Word Made Flesh, and I am done. So
that book is, and there was so much I could not include. I mean, of that interview, he has learned so much by working in these communities, and the depth of his understanding of God. That's really what inspires me, is that there's so much of God that we can find out, but we have to be willing to submit ourselves, humble ourselves, do all, but when we do, we get to the good stuff, and his life just exemplifies that. And so I do encourage people to read that book.
And
The Bible
Denise
says when one part hurts, we all hurt.
Right.
Yeah.
If we really own that, when one part of God's family is hurting, it's affecting us all, and we own it. We need to own it.
Like you said, is God a liar, or is what he said in the Bible true about how he takes care of the poor, and what is our role in that?
Exactly.
And Denise, if anyone does want to get in touch with Chris and pick up a copy of his book, Simple Spirituality, is that information on our website?
It's on our website, yes.
So you just log on to today's program and contact a guest, and you'll find Chris and all of his information there, as well as Ellie Kay and all of her information on our website, crossroads.ca.